Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Cruze, working through the Chapter 6 Algebra 2 test review so that most of you can do well on your test tomorrow. Alright? In this video, I will be finishing up the review. So, number 14, just want you to write this in exponential form. Not so bad. Remember, the index goes on the bottom of your fractional exponent. So the square root of x to the third is really x to the 3 over 2 power. Over kind of the opposite in the bottom. Now it's 2 over 3. The only thing you have to do, can't leave that the way it is, we have to subtract the powers. So you take x to the 3/2 minus 2/3 power. But you need common denominators here. So you have to multiply this one by 3 over 3, this one by 2 over 2. So anyway, it becomes x to the 9/6 minus 4/6 power. So it becomes x to the 5 over 6. Alright. Number 15, these are all just solving. Big thing, check for your solutions. Okay, make sure they work. This one you have to square both sides. Make sure you square the 2 as well. Of course, when you square, the square root goes away. But you have to be equal to 0 before you start. So we have to add x and subtract 3 in the same step. Anyway, you get 4x squared plus x minus 3 equals 0. And you have to factor this. Since there's a 4 out front, you have to remember a special trick to factoring. Take 4 times negative 3. Well, that's negative 12. So what multiplies to negative 12 and adds to 1, the number in the middle? Well, that would be negative 3 and positive 4. Okay. Split up the middle term. 4x squared minus 3x plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. Group the first 2 and group the second 2. Common factor is x, and you're left with 4x minus 3. We've done this all before, so that's why I'm going so fast through it. I know I did it correctly because these two are the same. So you get 4x minus 3 times x plus 1 equals 0, which of course, when you set both of those equal to 0, gives you two answers. This one gives you 3 over 4, and this one gives you negative 1. Now, you have to check these back into the original problem. Okay. It might seem weird to try the fraction, but that's okay. 2 times 3/4 is 3/2. That'd be that. Equals the square root of 3 minus 3/4. Well, that would be, what, 12/4 minus 3/4, so 9/4. And the square root of 9/4 is 3/2. So that one checks out. The negative 1, however, you get negative 2 equals the square root of 3 minus a negative 1, so that'd be 2. Does not work, so that one's out. So your only answer is x equals 3/4. Fractions are good. Number 16, you square both sides again because everything's good. Just don't forget that on this side you have to FOIL. Okay, make sure you FOIL. Anyway, you get x squared plus 5x plus 5x plus 25 equals x plus 11. Subtract the x and subtract the 11. We can go ahead and do that. Let's see, 5 and 5 is 10, minus 1, that'd be 9x plus 14 equals 0. What multiplies to 14 and adds to 9? That'd be 2 and 7. So your two answers are negative 2 and negative 7. Let's see, plug them back in. Negative 2 plus 5, well, that's 3. Square root of negative 2 plus 11, well, that's the square root of 9, which is, of course, 3. So negative 2 checks out. Negative 7, however, negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. Negative 7 plus 11 is the square root of 4, which is 2, which does not work. Okay, make sure you're checking these answers. If you just circle both of them and move on, you're going to be wrong. All right. X plus 4 to the 2/3, there's two ways to do it. I'm going to handle it as an exponent because I feel like exponents are easier. Okay. I need to take both sides to the reciprocal power. Okay. So I'm going to take both sides to the 3/2 power. What happens here is these cancel out and you're just left with x plus 4. On this side, though, you have to take 64 to the 3/2. Now, remember, this is the same thing as the square root of 64 to the third. Mr. Cruze, you say, this is a square root. What do I need when we put in our own square root? Plus or minus. Okay, that will be the biggest thing. People will forget that. Okay, remember, if this is even, you're going to need plus or minus. Okay. Anyway, real simple on your calculator. You take 64 to the 3/2 power, and you get, of course, 512. But remember, this is two answers. X plus 4 equals 512, and x plus 4 equals negative 512. Okay. Either way, you're going to subtract 4 from both sides. This one gives you x equals 508. This one gives you x equals negative 516. Try them out, of course. 508 plus 4 is 512, and 512 to the 2/3 power is indeed 64. So 508 works. Negative 516 plus 4 is negative 512, and you have to be careful on your calculator. Remember, this is where your calculator tries to say there's a domain error, right? But let me kind of walk you through it just so you don't think that it's causing a problem. Negative 512 to the 2/3 is the same as the cubed root of negative 512 squared, right? Well, the cubed root of negative 512 is, of course, negative 8. And when you square negative 8, you do get positive 64. So they both do work, even though your calculator might say there's a domain error. Okay? So be careful. All right? This one, before you can square both sides, you have to get x over. So you get 5x minus 4 to the 1/2 power equals x. To undo 1/2, you just square both sides. Remember, this is a square root. So you get 5x minus 4 equals x squared. And once again, get everything on the left, or that'd be your right. Get everything on one side. You get 0 equals x squared minus 5x plus 4. What multiplies to 4 and adds to negative 5? That would be negative 1 and negative 4. You get two answers, 1 and 4. Okay. And of course, try them back out here. 5 times 1 is 5, minus 4 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1, which equals 1. So 1 checks out. 5 times 4 is 20, minus 4 is 16, and the square root of 16 is 4, and that does equal 4, so they both work. Number 19, subtract 2 from both sides. Square root of x minus 7 equals 5. Square both sides, you get x minus 7 equals 25. And you add 7 to both sides, and of course x equals 32. Plug it back in to check. 32 minus 7 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5, plus 2 does equal 7. So it works. Okay. Subtract 6 on this one. You get square root of x plus 4 equals 1. Square both sides. Pretty easy to square 1. You get x equals negative 3. And you might think, well, it's negative. Will that work? Of course it does. Plug it back in. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. Plus 6 does equal 7. Pretty nifty, right? Okay. 21. What's the perimeter of a rectangle with a length? Square root of 75x. And width, square root of 48x. Okay. Remember, perimeter, you're going to have to add all these up. Okay. Remember, in a rectangle, opposite sides are congruent, so we know that. But in order to add these, I'm going to need common radicals, basically. So let's break down square root of 75x. Okay? This breaks down to the square root of 25 times the square root of 6. And the x can't go anywhere. Did I say 6? I meant 3. My fault, I'm jumping ahead. 5, square root of 3x. Okay? So that's square root of 75x. Square root of 48x breaks down into the square root of 16 and the square root of 3x. So you get 4 square root of 3x. Okay? So anyway, you add all those up. This one equals 5 square root of 3x. This one equals 4 square root of 3x. You add all those up. You get 5 and 4, which is 9. Double that, you get 18 square root of 3x inches. Okay? Not so bad. And finally, the area of a circle is pi r squared. We want to solve that for r, so here we go. We're going to get r by itself. First thing you have to do is divide both sides by pi. So you get r squared equals a over pi. So far so good. Take the square root of both sides. You get r equals the square root of a over the square root of pi. And you might be thinking, oh, that's fine. Oh, but the instructions say rationalize the denominator. So we have to get rid of that square root of pi in the bottom. Okay. By the way, just a helpful hint, you'll notice I did not put plus or minus here, even though I took my own square root. That's because it's a radius. It can't be negative, right? Geometry saves the day again. All right. So we have to multiply the top and bottom by the square root of pi. Piece of cake at this point. It's the square root of a pi over the square root of pi squared, which of course is just pi. No need for absolute values here because, again, well, this is pi, it's just a number. There's no way it can be anything else. Okay, you wouldn't put absolute value around a 3 or anything. So that's part A. Part B, find the radius of a circle whose area is 79. So you just plug things in. Square root of 79 is the area times pi divided by pi, and that'll give you the radius. A simple plugging in your calculator. I would do this in 2 steps almost. Okay, 2 steps. I would take 79 times pi. I'm going to use 3.14 here in case your calculator doesn't have a pi button. For the top part, I get square root of 248.06 over pi. Square root of that equals 15.7499. That's probably good enough. And divide that by pi, 3.14. You get 5.01, but it says round to the nearest whole number. So our radius is 5, and don't forget your units. This is feet, because I see feet. So our radius is 5 feet for our circle. Alright, I hope these videos were helpful. Pass them along to your friends so that they can also study for this test. I want you all to be as successful as possible on this Chapter 6 test. This is Mr. Cruze. You can always email me, Twitter me, contact me through these videos. If you need help, I'll be at school in the morning, of course. Just make sure that you are studying for these and keep track of all the rules. All right? Bonne chance.